Hi, Greg. Thank you very much for coming to Atlanta. It was really nice seeing you. I tend to see you when I'm on the East Coast. The last time we saw each other was a couple of years ago when I was in Texas, and that was also a lot of fun. So, you posted some images on our group to get a little bit of critique on your images, and I'm going to kind of go through just a part of it. I'm not going to actually do a whole critique on the all the elements of the images, but I'm going to kind of go through exposure, judging exposure, manipulating your highlights and shadows to get the best effect from your images, kind of a respecting where the key light is. So from the workshop, key light is the light that sets up the basic shadow pattern in the space, and we either create a different one or we respect the light that's coming into the areas. So so this first one is actually pretty easy. As we look at it, we're going to take this image and we're going to measure it by its luminance values. So we're going to go from color to monochrome, and we're going to take away all the color. So all we have left is the luminance values. So we can actually see the brightness, the bright and dark areas of the image. When we take away the colors, you can actually see that the brightest area in this is outside, which means that when we look at the picture, we have all this really nice stuff going on the inside, but the highest level of contrast is outside. And what we need to do is we need to address that. Also, that is that is beyond white. There is no, I mean, that's white, but there's no detail in there. So the two things we want to do is we want to kind of bring it down a little bit, and hopefully we get a little bit of detail there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a mask. We're going to do range and luminance. We're going to click on that highlight area, and it selects that, and it selects all these other stuff inside. So we're going to take the select luminance slider, and we're just going to kind of customize where it's going to highlight. Remember, the green is the area selected, and right now the way this is selected, outside is actually selected pretty well. So we're going to take the highlights and we're going to bring it down. And then we're going to bring down the exposure just a little bit. Now notice that it is kind of screwing around with other areas inside because it selected it. So what we want to do with this is we want to just attack the outside. So we go to the mask, we're going to these three little dots, and we're going to use a tool called intersect. Now intersect is me telling Photoshop with a brush, wherever I paint this brush, that's all I want you to show. So I'm going to take this and go on the outside and just paint on the outside. That's all I'm going to do. And we're bringing down the exposure and the contrast from outside. So we have some of that nice inside area. Maybe that's just a little much. So we have control over that. So there, we actually have the outside under control a little bit. And as we go back to color, we're going to go back to color, bring the color back in. Let's do before and after. See that little thing of controlling the highlights? We actually have more of a reason to stay inside because these highlights aren't screaming to get us outside. And done. So let's go with another thing about exposure. Exposure, our eyes go to the highest level of contrast in the scene. Now, what happens in this particular thing, we're going to again strip the color out of it. We're going to go to monochrome. Now, here, if we look, the highest level of contrast is the black and the black, I don't know, apron that's on this counter and the counter. Now, the counter, as we take the color out, is again, it's white. And it actually is at the very corner of this image. So you have placed a big white counter, and just and it's only like a quarter of the picture, but because of the contrast and because of the size, it is literally keeping me from getting to this picture. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to again, we're just going to it isn't white. I mean, there's no detail in there. So again, we're going to just make a mask, range, luminance. We're going to kind of make sure we can hit the counter and the chair. We're just going to bring the highlights down a little bit. Now, one of the things that's as we do this, look how much detail is actually being brought back into the counter, regardless of the exposure. Doing this, am bringing back a lot of the detail that wasn't there with the regular exposure. And again, the way it's selected, there was all these other things that we don't need to, like on the walls and stuff, that those were selected that don't need to be changed. We're going to do intersect with brush. We're just going to take a smaller brush this time, and we're going to see. We're just going to darken it, but we're getting much better detail in the marble, and we're kind of cut down the exposure on the chair, and so the chair isn't this white thing in the very front of the picture. This is really cool. You're gonna love this. Being that we're in luminance mode, we actually now can kind of analyze the entire grayscale. This histogram shows me that there is a lot. This is the whites. This is highlights. This is the midtones, shadows, and blacks. Now, if we look at the counter, there, if you remember, well, we can actually show you. Let's go to color. I want you to look at these cabinets the way this is exposure wise. So these wood cabinets had a little bit of a red in them. So we're going to go back to monochrome. Now, if we take out the color, you see that there's really not there's not a lot of contrast in the cabinets and in the wood. So what we need to do is we actually need to bring more contrast there, because as we're kind of looking, these are midtones, all these are midtones and lower midtones. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in blacks. We're going to bring down the highlights just a little bit. And in effects, we're going to use dehaze, which brings a little more pop. Now take a look at the cabinets. The cabinets have much more contrast in them. When we switch to color, do you see how much we're going to flip this back? Do you see how much more red there is in the cabinets when we actually play with the contrast? We did not do a color correction. We literally just did a contrast correction inside here. So what happens in this case is, with proper exposure, you should be judging your color this way. So you get your exposures right first, and then you do your color correcting. Because if we would go the other way from this, yes, we can color correct this, but it's much harder to do color correction if the exposures are wrong. And again, as we look at this, we're actually getting the nice red back into the wood, and it wasn't there originally. And we did this color correction, not by correcting the color, but just getting the proper contrast range in those scenes. So as we look at this again, we've knocked down the highlights in the foreground, which means that we get more detail in the counters for the marble. So that actually gives us better kind of respect for the materiality that this is made out of. And the bright point now is this panel for the stove, which is just a little brighter than the foreground, which means that our eyes go to the stove instead of being kind of choked up here. Okay, so one of the things in our workshop is key light. Key light is the light source that sets up the basic shadow patterns for the room that we're working in. Now, again, since we're working with light, we are going to go into monochrome, which brings us just the luminance values. As we look at this, I'm looking at the fireplace and the white around the fireplace, and it goes from this really white to the bottom. I'm trying to figure out where the light's coming from. If we have this window that's over here to the right, there should not be anything this white from this window higher than this line. So obviously that's not obvious, but this lets me kind of feel like this is flash. And so what we kind of want to do is kind of blend this with the flash a little bit, blend this flash layer with the ambient a little more, because I kind of see what you're trying to do here. So I'm thinking that this needs to have a little bit more of the ambient frame, and you can use this frame to kind of control the color cast from the ambient. But I like this. I like the shot, and one of the things that when it's this bright here, again, this is where our eyes go. It's this big white space. We have this kind of black TV. Our eyes really are hovering around here. I want to get past this. I want to go to that door. I want to go to that. What I want to be interested in that area off to the right, because that's kind of interesting. But the way that the lighting and the shadows and the color and the luminance tones are presented, you're telling me that the most important thing in this shot is that TV in that corner in that lampshade. So here, kind of blend this with more of the ambient to kind of tone this down, and I think that'd be a much better shot. Okay, I've taken enough time. I will do the other two later. And for anybody else that was at the workshop, if you want to send pictures in for me, Tony, or Fraser to critique on, send it to us.